Welcome back to another Spirit Island video. In this video, we'll be doing another minor power tier list, and we're going to be focusing on B tier for this video, and then the final video will be doing C and F tier. I tried to make these columns, I tried to group them up under similar functions. So these first few columns are going to be B tier defend cards. Let's flip those up. And once again, before I get talking about all of the cards, basically the cards near the top in S tier, A tier, these are cards that can be taken by most spirits in the game. Pretty much every spirit are going to want to see some of these cards here, okay? Now, as you move down the tier list, the cards are going to be more specialized. Fewer spirits will be able to utilize them, and you're going to be passing them more and more frequently. S tier, like I said, basically these cards, you're always considering them regardless of the spirit. And then A tier, maybe some of them might not be considered, and then so forth. So looking at B tier, these are my two lines of defense that kind of line up with the A tier. Basically, the one thing that holds these cards back is they cost one energy, and that one energy is a very large barrier. I know there are some cards in A tier that cost one energy, but they tend to do something special, like Nature's Resilience, giving us a defend 6, massive defend, that defends against a town, explorer, city. Quicken, that's a defend 10. Fire in the Sky is a strife ad, which can be used to strife a city, which is very important into Sweden or like France. Here in B tier, you have Dark and Tangled Woods, and yes, it gives fear, and that can be excellent, but it's a situational defend 3. It only is a defend 3 on 2 land types. Primal is a solid defend 3, but it's 1 energy defend 3 is basically what it is. And then it has that benefit of extra fear. Confounding Mist is pretty much just a 1 energy defend 4. I never really can make use of the second line of text on Confounding Mists, but I'm sure there are some spirits that do. The fact that it's 2 elements for me holds it back a lot of times. Favor, I picked this up quite a bit. I do love playing the new Nature's Incarnate Spirit Roots, and this is one of the only tri-element cards in the game. Defend 4, Blight Movement. I love this card, but I mean, I see it for what it is. It's just a solid B tier card. It's a defend 4 most of the time. It has extra elements. The Sun and Moon is great, but that's about all it is. Same thing with Guardian Serpents. It's a defend 4. It has a little bit better elements than Favor, but you need to have that Sacred Site. It also creates beasts. Elusive Ambushers, another defend 4 for 1 energy, but the land has to target Dahan, which makes this land a little bit situational. In addition, the elements on here tend to be a little bit awkward. Typically, well, I guess it's very spirit dependent, but from my perspective, this card tends to be very awkward on a lot of spirits that have the availability to take that defend. And then Domesticated, it's a 0 cost, it's a 1 cost, 0 range defend 5. It has that ability to add beasts, but one thing that really holds it back is this targeting restriction. Having to target buildings really hurts it. There are so many games where there'll be 2 explorers and that land will actually blight, and you can't use this land to defend it. Actually, in one of Ray's playthrough videos on the Many Mines, his Many Mines video, I was playing River in a multiplayer game, and you can actually see it. I believe I make the mistake of playing this card on a land with a bunch of explorers, forgetting that it has this strict restriction. So once again, these are solid defend cards. Like, I'm happy if I pick them up, but they're going to be a little bit more specialized than the defense up here in A tier. So the next column here, this is kind of like my utility column here. We have Twin Days, Elemental Boon, Spur, and Sky Stretch. I have Entrap and Sucking Ooze as utility cards. Basically, they're isolates that can do a little bit more. So Entrap, being able to gather Blight, is pretty nice. Now, that 1 energy really hurts. There might be an argument for this card being C tier, just because 1 energy for an isolate is just usually not good enough for a lot of spirits. But for some spirits like Fangs, this is everything you want. I pick up Sucking Ooze quite a lot. Isolate for 0 cost is great. Now it is, and it also can give you 2 fear. The Water Earth is no joke, especially for spirits like Ocean, where it's like an element. Starlight, that water and that earth innate. And it all, like I said, it's also just fear, pushing that fear win con. This next column here, this is the column I have designated for cards that affect multi-lands. So like calls like a way to stop a city build and an explorer, and a just regular build. In addition, it can gather Dahan, beasts. It just depends on the target. It's a solid card. There's some cases where it's amazing. I had a game today where I was playing in Sweden 6, and it was here. I'll set up the board for you guys. It was Sweden 6, board E. And I was playing Papa Roots, and so Sweden board. What makes Sweden very difficult is you start with a city on land 4 as well as a town on land 8, right? And you also start with a town on E7. And on turn, so the starting explorer this game was mountain, and the royal backing was jungle. So my board looked like this today. And there we go. Okay. And this land, this E8 land, if this wetlands ever comes up, I'm doomed. Well, my first draft was like calls like, and I just threw this card down on the board with the hopes that if wetlands does come up, I'll be able to gather in this town from E8, and that basically solves this E8 land. Just because the wetland explorer on board is very difficult, and guess what? It was wetlands, and I was able to do some shenanigans. I believe I ended up pulling a Dahan in, and then I moved the town and no, it wasn't the Dahan. I moved the explorer into the jungle, and then I used the town explorer gather from the wetlands into the jungle here, and I was pretty happy with that setup. So this next column, I have this as just like fast disruption and strong constant currents. We have ever twisting trail, disorienting landscape, and razor sharp. These cards are solid pickups. It's just the disruption tends to be a little bit I guess gated. So for instance, looking at strong constant currents, this is actually a great card. It's 0 cost. It's a fast push, but it has to target a coast, which really restricts its usage. Now, if you have the 2 water, it's now moving Dahan as well as pushing, which is really cool. One thing that people don't realize about strong constant currents is, so if I'm playing on board E here, and I use the card here, oh, I don't know why that marker is really big. Let's see if I can fix that. There we go. If I use strong and constant currents, let's say on E1, the second line of text says I can move up to 2 Dahan between target land and one other coastal land. So it's one other coastal land. It doesn't have to be adjacent. So I can actually choose Dahan on another board and I can rescue them. Or I can choose the ones on E3 and move them into my E1. So there's actually a lot of value with this card, and that's not even the disruption. So Ever Twisting Trail, it's it's basically a build disruption that isolates the land. It's pretty solid in some matchups. Other matchups, it's just a little bit too expensive. Disorienting Landscape, similar to Twisting Trail, but instead of isolating, you get a wilds if you pick the correct land type. And then Razor Sharp, it is a build skip that also defends 2 and adds a wilds. The reason why it's here and not A tier is because it's 0 cost and it's blight restricted and it kills Dahan. So there's like 3 restrictions on this card. So it's very rare that I can actually find a land where this card is exactly what I need, because just looking, like for instance, if this is the board here, if this was the Explorer, my board looks like this. Like I can't even use Razor Sharp because the only land where it would stop a build would be my wetland, and in which case it kills a Dahan. So I guess the only Explorer would be like this Sands. If that came up, then it would be useful. Looking at the next tier, I have this as the Dahan movement tier. And I find these cards to be just a little bit more restricted than the ones up here. Now, I actually pick up Call to Ferocity quite a lot. So we have Call to Ferocity, Rights, and Bird's Cry. They aren't bad cards. It's just I find the cards appear to be a little bit more versatile. But like I said, I tend to pick up Call to Ferocity quite a lot. I mean, it's 0 cost. It moves Dahan. It has nice elements, Sun, Fire, Earth. It also can act as a way to disrupt a build or disrupt a Ravage. Rights of Land Rejection, it's a Dahan push, and it also has the ability to skip builds, and that build skip has a ton of utility, especially into the England adversary. Bird's Cry Warning, also fast Dahan push, and it has the ability to protect 2 Dahan. Now the land will still blight, but it will protect up to 2 Dahan, and that can be used to potentially clear a land. What's great about Bird's Cry is that sun animal, and that can be used to threshold and also combo with Vigor of the Breaking Dawn, and that's a major that we talked about as one of the best majors in the game, and it allows us to do a ton of damage in multiple lands. Not only does that threshold that card, but it also gives you Dahan movement to better set up your Vigor. Looking at the next column here, I have this as the, I guess, blight removal category. These are the better blight removal cards. We have Purifying Flame, we have Voracious Growth, and we also have Renewing Rain. They're all solid. I think I have these blight removal cards here and not in C tier, mainly because they're versatile. They can do 2 different things. So like Purifying Flame, this one's typically just blight removal, but it has really good elements that sun, fire, and air. Very, very good. Voracious Growth has bad elements, and but it has that alternative option of doing damage, which can be great into Russia and France. Renewing Rain has better elements, and it gets to come with the wilds if you have an extra plant. But pretty much all 3 of these blight removal cards, they tend to stand above the rest of the blight removal cards that are down in C and F tier. I believe this is it. This column is the token column. We have Inflame, Sear Anger, Blood Draws, Dire Metamorphosis, Swarming Wasps. Starting with Inflame, this card has saved me in games. It's also just been a completely dead card. It's a slow energy. Well, it's 1 energy. It's slow, and it targets from a sacred site, and it allows you to either add a disease or a strife. It is quad element, which is really handy. And then if you have 3 animal, you get to do both. Like I said, it can save you some games. Some games you just can't play it because it doesn't impact the board soon enough. Sear Anger is a solid card. It's a 0 cost card, and it adds a Badlands. That's a very good card. It's just when you compare it to a card like Hazards is just so much better. You get an extra element, and you get flexibility of adding any token, and it's fast. So it's just not worthy of A tier. Now it's still a great card. Blood Draws, I find this card. I know there's a lot of players that like this one. I'm not in that group. It has 4 elements, which is great. But the biggest problem with this card is you need to do damage in a land for it to actually have value. And even then, that value is limited by the number of beasts you have. This card can't be used on many mines. So pretty much the only spirit that wants this card is Fangs. And even then, Fangs doesn't even want this card. And that's probably that might surprise some players. But the reason is Fangs' energy budget. If you're playing the bottom track Fangs build, your energy is so tight. Playing 1 extra energy to have this effect it tends to not be good enough, because with Fangs you have just enough damage to clear lands. This extra damage is just not worth it. Now there are some matchups where it's going to be great, like if you're playing England and you need extra damage to take out those England buildings, then yes, you're going to see some play with this card. But a lot of times I end up passing this up on Fangs. I'm trying to think of another spirit that could really utilize Blood Draws. I guess it's probably a better Vengeance card now that I think about it, because it's perfect element, and you do get the Badlands proc on it. So yeah, I guess Vengeance is gonna love it. I'm sure maybe Wildfire might too. I bet Lure does, but yeah, Fangs, not a big fan of this card. Dire Metamorphosis, it's a 1 energy, and you add a bunch of tokens. You also add a Blight, and you get to do some damage. I don't like this card, but there are some players in my group that have kind of pushed me to bring it higher. So here it is. I pretty much never pick it, but I mean, it is quad element, and it does do quite a lot. It usually solves a land, but it does give that Blight. Lastly, Swarming Wasps, one of my favorite cards on the list. Sometimes this card is exactly what you need. Other times it's just completely useless. Now, I mean, it is a 0 cost fire, air, animal, so it still has value for elements. And it also can add beasts, but that bottom part where if target land has beasts, you can push 2 explorers. That tends to be very useful, especially into France and Russia. The next column, okay, so this is the fear column. These are just pure fear cards. We have Portents and Rain of Blood. I think Portents is slightly better than Rain of Blood just because the elemental spread, Sun, Moon, Air are some of the elements that you want to have for those event forgets. It's also fast fear. I do find myself picking up Rain of Blood quite a lot. It's just 3 fear in the slow usually, and the air animal is excellent for a spirit like Many Minds or Fangs that has extra plays, or maybe River, a spirit that has extra plays and needs that a little boost of fear. Scour the Land. I think I've made a new column here. This is supposed to be it's a very niche card where playing it into Russia or what is it? Russia, France, and sometimes England. This card can be very potent. Otherwise, it's a pretty dead card. It's usually a slow. I mean, it's adding a blight. It kills buildings, but it's really just Russia and then France is where you're going to see play on this card, and that's why it's in B tier. If it was better into the other matchups, I could see it getting played. Let's look at this next one. It looks like I have just Dahan damage events or minor powers. Um, we have Call to Bloodshed, Pact of the Joined Hunt, and Bat Scout. All 3 of these cards, they're not bad cards. I'll pick it up sometimes if it fits the spirit, but a lot of times it just gets passed up because there tends to be better cards in the deck. I think if I had to pick which is the best one, I'd probably say Pact of the Joined Hunt because you can target any player. So there's pretty much you're going to get value with this card. While the other 2 cards, they tend to be a little bit more specialized. While this Bat Scout can only deal damage to buildings, and Call to Bloodshed, you have to choose a Dahan land, and that can be awkward for that gather up to 3 Dahan. So you really can't use this to set up Ravages, or not Ravages, set up like Dahan counterattacks. Because the land already has to have Dahan, which makes this card very niche, I guess. Let's look at the next card. We have Rouse. I guess this is just another damage card that I have. It's pretty solid. It might be an A tier card. I think I have it here mainly because it's slow and the blight restriction. And then in some matchups like Habsburg and England, this card is just completely useless. Like you'll never be able to play it. But into other matchups like Scotland, France, Sweden, like this card has a lot of text. Russia too. I actually just recorded a game where this card was very potent into Russia. This is my fear column that also has disruption. It's usually less fear than Portents and Rain of Blood, but it comes with a little bit extra boost. These 2 cards are probably better than Portents and Rain of Blood. We have Here There Be Monsters and Shadows. Shadows is 2 fear, and I get to push an explorer or town if it's in a mountain or jungle. And then Here There Be Monsters is a single push, but it has to be from an inland land, but it can also move Dahan. I think both are solid. If they costed 1, they would definitely be in C tier. I think if they were non-restricted, they would definitely be in like A tier. Like if that was like this, and if this was like this, they would definitely be moved up a tier. But here they are. The final tier is, I guess I just have this as like a catch-all category. I didn't know where to put these cards. We have Flow Down River, Territorial Strife, and Animated Rockroot. The cards all have specific value based on the adversary. I guess they have more mileage. So like Flow Down River, being able to maneuver Blight, explorers, towns can be very good. Territorial Strife, that strife add, or just killing multiple explorers or dealing damage to towns can be very good into like France or Russia. You hear me say that a lot, but basically, like because this card can kill a ton of explorers, it just sees play. It's also 0 cost. It's zero cost cards can't be bad. Like, actually, let me rephrase. I think there's a couple down here in C tier that are 0 cost that are bad, but pretty much every 0 cost card is at least B tier. Like you can find pretty solid uses for them. Animated Rockroot. Usually I use this as a 0 cost wilds. Because it's zero range, it really holds this card back. Now it does have that Explorer Destroy and Extra Fear, which could be great. The Fire Plant is also very strong on a lot of spirits, like Keeper. Getting access to that fire to hit your left innate could be massive. Trying to think if there's anything else with this video. The B tier cards, once again, these are all solid pickups. Like you're going to find times where this will be the exact card you need. Other times you'll just pass it up because you know there's just cards that are better. So if you like this video, like, subscribe for more content. I'll see you guys in the next video.